Welcome to Sanity.io's crash course, where we'll cover how to get started with Sanity, the Sanity Studio, and understand the content lake. So Sanity is where you store your content, where you and your team work together to publish new content and express it in any digital experience. Whether you're on an enterprise team, have an e-commerce store, or even a side project, Sanity is an extremely customizable and composable solution that provides amazing developer and editorial experience. Sanity is your content backend that can be used with any front end like Next, Nuxt, Astro, Svelte, you name it, it works. We'll explore the Sanity Studio in this crash course, show what it means to structure your content and query for that content to display on any front end. We'll use the Studio to create and edit content, and we'll dive into the code to customize the schemas that make up our structure in our Studio. Let's get to it. All right, so the first thing we want to do is get our Sanity project up and running via the command line. So open up whatever you'd like to use. I'm going to be using the terminal, and we're going to run the command npm create sanity at latest. This will bring in the latest version of Sanity. So it's going to ask us to log in. I'm going to log in using Google. You can use GitHub or email password. And it's going to open up my browser, and I'm going to log in. It was successful, so it's going to continue doing the Sanity project creation. Now we're going to do create new project, so I'm just going to hit enter. And let's call this Sanity Crash Course. You can name it exactly this, but whatever you choose to name it. We're going to hit none. We don't want to tie it to any organization that is currently in my Sanity account. And then it's going to ask if we want to use the default dataset, and we're going to hit yes because we want to use production. Now it's creating that for us. And is that the correct path? It is, so just hit enter. Now we're going to use a project template, so movie project, e-commerce, blog, or clean project. So clean project would be no schemas, nothing written out, no sample data. Movie or e-commerce is there's schemas and there's sample data in there. Blog is just schemas, and we'll put in our own data. So we're going to hit blog. So enter on blog, and we'll use TypeScript. So hit Y for yes. The package manager we're going to be using is npm. So hit enter. Let that do its thing. And once this is all done, we are going to go into our project. So we are going to cd into Sanity Crash Course, and then we're going to open up the project in our VSCode. You can use any text editor you'd like. I'm going to be using VSCode. And it should be done very soon. And here we go. So I'm going to cd into Sanity Crash Course. Hit enter, and the shortcut is code space period to open up VSCode. And here we are. Here is our new project. So the first thing we want to do is get it up and running locally. So I'm going to do the keyboard shortcut Control tilde to open up my terminal and run the command npm run dev. Hit enter, and that will run it locally on 3333. I'm going to open that up, and it in my browser, so let me pull that over. It's asking me to log in, so I'm going to log in real quick using the same method I logged in earlier, so Google. And let's bring that over. And here is my studio, the studio that we just created. Now, a couple of things about the studio is a web app written in React. So we're running it locally on our computer now, where we will edit it and customize it. And we're currently looking at the desk tool of the studio. So the studio is connected to a real-time hosted content lake. There's no local content. What you do gets synced automatically to the content lake that we're talking about, but more on that in just a moment. So we will deploy the studio. So once it's all done and we think it's ready to use, we'll deploy it. And there's different ways you can deploy it. But let's actually compare it to the code that we have in our VS Code. Okay, so let's pull this aside. Now this schema folder, let me point this out. The document types we are seeing here in our studio are what is defined in our schemas folder. So we have author, post. They follow a content model that is defined in the schemas file within our code. And then the structure, so let's go into author. And let's get rid of that. Let's bring it down just a little bit. Go into author and start a new one. So the structure is also defined by schemas and within those document types. And we can customize all this however we want. So if we look, we see author as the document type, and we have a fields array. And over in our studio, that fields array shows up just like this. So we have name, we have slug. If we scroll down, we have image, and we have bio. Now each one has a name, title, and type. Some also have options, but these are the different types of schemas that you can use within the Sanity Studio. There's a giant list of schemas that you can use within the docs. Definitely check those out. But for these, we have string, we have slug, we have image. Now let's actually add one. Let's actually customize our studio a little bit. So we have name. I'm going to just copy this name, and I'm going to edit it a little bit. So the name we see here is the name of the field. So I'm going to call it nickname. The title is what we see over on the studio side. So I'm just going to call this nickname. And then we're going to keep the type as a string. Now the moment I save that, it gets updated. And now we have name and we have nickname. Both are string fields. The type is string for our field. So name, we will add our name. My nickname is Cap. Now we're going to generate the slug, and notice how it didn't go off of nickname because over here we have the source for slug as name. So that is how we can customize and add a new field to our Sanity Studio. Now let's add a couple different types of content. So let's pull this over just a little bit. Let's go to our content. And let's do post. Let's add a new post. So this is like a blog post. And let's do Sanity crash course, generate a slug, and it's looking at the title. Author, we'll do a drop down and we'll click on my name, but we get a little warning saying that this reference must be published because now we're referencing another document type. So let's go back to our author. And let's publish it. But we notice we don't have image or bio. So let's actually add in an image. There's the image, and let's do a bio. I do developer relations at Sanity. Nice to meet you. Okay, so let's publish that. But let's do something real quick. So Hotspot and crop is a really awesome feature with the image, with the images within the studio. So we can do some stuff here. We can delete it or download a different image. But let's click on this little icon, and the hotspot and crop shows up. Let me unzoom just a little bit so you can kind of see the whole thing. But we have the outer edge, which is cropping it, and then this circle, which is doing hotspot. So let's say I always want my face always in view. So notice as I was changing that, the ratio down below was also changing. So now you know whatever your image area is in your front end, my face will always be in view. So that is how hotspot and crop works. And we can just exit out of that. And I know that my face will always show up in any ratio that I have. Let's publish that. And let's go back to the post that we were creating. And then right away, my image shows up and my author. If I wanted to clear or replace, I can do that here. And it just gives us a little bit of information. Now let's do a main image for our Sanity crash course. And we'll just do this backdrop that I have. Perfect. Let's add the body of it. This is the ultimate guide to Sanity. Perfect. And did you notice as I was typing, as I was doing all of this, down here, it was saving and syncing. So I could do welcome, and it's saving and it's saved. So it's syncing automatically. And then once I publish, the document was published and it would go to my front end if I had my front end all tied up. So all of this content lives in the cloud. We call this cloud the content lake, like I mentioned earlier. So what we did was we wrote to this content lake via the Sanity Studio. Using our APIs, we can send our data to the content lake and also fetch from it as well. This also happens within datasets. So a dataset is a collection of JSON documents that can be of different types and have references to each other. We can actually view the raw JSON of our data by clicking on these three dots and then inspect. Click on raw JSON, and this is where we can see all of the JSON for our post, or if we were an author, same thing. So you can think of a data set as a database where all of your content is stored, whereas the document types would constitute tables. So everything in the content lake is your project. You decide who has access to it. So let me show you real quick how you can add users. So sanity.io/manage, and it's going to open up my manage dashboard. There's a lot going on, but the one we just made is right here, Sanity Crash Course. And in here, we have our project ID. This is where our project ID lives. We also have members where we can add project members. We can give certain types of access. Also, it's important to note that this is where the API configuration is also done. You're going to add course origins when you want to add a URL that also has access to your content. So make sure you come here when you want to add mywebsite.com and allow credentials so that your content can show up on your front end. So that is the manage dashboard. So speaking of who has access to your projects, you can add free admin users to your free Sanity project. The free tier is very generous. You can have as many projects as you want, free admin users, and everything I do in this video is included in that free forever tier. So it's super generous, the usage quota, so definitely check that out. But back to our studio and our code, remember the schemas we looked at earlier? Those are part of the studio. They're separate from the data. The data is always in the cloud, or in our case, the content lake, stored as JSON. And schemas are always a part of the studio. So the schemas, so what we see here, let me exit out of this. The schemas are always a part of the studio, and this data is in the content lake as JSON. Now that we've played around with our studio, let's customize it even more. The studio has plugins, and one plugin I really want to point out is the Vision plugin. This one is super useful, and to show you how to install a plugin, let's start this one from scratch. You may have a project that already has a Vision plugin added, but this is just so we can see how to add any plugin from the start. So we're going to go back to our project, and let me actually show you real quick where you can find that project ID that I showed you earlier in the sanity.config.ts. That is that project ID and that data set. Okay, we're going to be working in this file right now. So I'm going to open up my terminal again. And let's open up a new one. We'll keep that running locally. And we are going to run the command npm I at sanity/vision at latest. This is going to bring in the latest version. Okay, so it installed it for us, and now we have the Vision plugin, but we still have a couple more things to do, so I'm going to exit out of that. Now up here at the top of my sanity.config.ts file, we're going to import the Vision tool from, and what we just did was at Sanity Vision. Awesome, so let's use that. So down here in plugins, all we need to do is just chain that on, and we'll do Vision tool and use that. So let's save this real quick. And again, this file is very important. We have the Vision plugin that we just added, but we also have that project ID. So you always have, and you'll need that when you connect it to your front end. So let's see what just happened. So we added the Vision plugin. So up here you see Vision right next to desk. And if I click on that, we see a query playground. So What does the Vision plugin do exactly? It is our studio's playground for querying our content. So to fetch your data, you can use either GROQ or GraphQL. So in this video, let's focus on GROQ and look through what it is and how to get started with it. So here are the docs for GROQ, and you can learn a lot about it here, different operators and functions, the syntax for it. There's an awesome cheat sheet, and I'm going to show you it real quick, where it just kind of shows you a bunch of different queries that you can write and what would come out of it. It's very long, it's very informative, so I highly recommend looking at this cheat sheet. But let's write a couple queries ourselves. So here, to get everything, to get all of our content, we're going to do the asterisk. And if I do fetch, it pulls in all of the stuff that we have. But I'm going to pull out, so I'm going to do square brackets, everything that is type that is equal to post. Hit Control Enter or hit fetch down here, and we have one item. Okay, here's our one post that we have. Now, quick tip, if you had your post in draft mode, okay, so it's not published yet, we go back to Vision, and let's fetch that again. Now we have two items because one is a draft. So see how this says draft, the ID has draft in front of it, and one is not. So sometimes you'll see two when really you only have one, but it's because you have one that's in draft mode and one that's published. So until we publish that, and go back, fetch it again, now we have one item again. So let's actually filter down and pull out just a couple of things. So we'll do curly braces and do title, and let's get, we'll do author. So we have the title, Sanity Crash Course, and we have the author. Now the author is a reference, so it's not pulling out the info of the author, but I want to pull out the author's name. So to dereference in GROQ, we're going to do an arrow. Let's fetch that again because I want to show you everything that we get. And it dereferences and it gets all the information that we would have gotten. But we can filter down even more. So curly braces again, and we'll do name. Fetch that. And now we have the author name, Kapehe, title, Sanity Crash Course. And we can chain onto this. We can do nickname, and it would bring up the nickname that we had. If we forgot what we wanted, and maybe we wanted also the slug or the bio, whatever it is, we have ways to filter down and get exactly what we want. So once we have the exact query that we want, we can take this, we can just copy this, and put it into the fetch or into the Sanity client to integrate our content with our front-end project. And this is getting our Sanity Studio up and running. Content being sent to the content lake, also being fetched from the content lake via GROQ. So next thing we need to do is deploy it. So we're going to deploy our studio via the Sanity CLI, but I want to note that it can deploy on Vercel, Netlify, or really any hosting platform. Today we are going to be using the Sanity CLI. So to do that, I'm going to bring this over and bring my terminal back up. So to get the Sanity CLI, we're going to run npm install-g to install it globally, Sanity at latest. Now, that's bringing in the latest version. It's going to run it globally, or save it globally, and hit enter. Awesome, so that worked. Now, if it doesn't work on your computer, another tip would be npx sanity at latest. That is another way to do it. So the next thing I need to do is run sanity deploy, hit enter, and it's going to ask me a couple of questions. So the studio host name has to be unique. So what I use here will be taken because it's now a URL. So I'm going to do Sanity Crash Course. I actually don't know if this is available. So let's see. So I'm going to hit enter. It's already taken. We'll just do Crash Course. Already taken. We'll do the Sanity crash course. And it's not taken. Perfect. So you will need to come up with a unique name. And now my studio is going to be living at thesanitycrashcourse.sanity.studio. And here's my entire URL. So I'm going to open that up. Open. And it's opening up over here. And here is my newly deployed studio that we just had running locally. Just like that, running Sanity deploy, we have it. Now, this is the URL that you would use to share to your team. Like, here's our studio that we're going to add content to after, of course, you've given them permission and access. Okay, so let me show you what is one of my favorite things about the studio, how quick it updates in real time. So we have, let me zoom in just a little bit on this. So they're kind of the same. Let me go back to desk, out of vision. So we have the local version and we have the deployed version. So if I go to post on both, I'll do it at the same time. So you can be using this locally and deployed, and this is what happens. So as soon as I click into one, you'll see my little avatar pop up on the deployed side. And if I make an edit, immediately it shows up on the deployed side. So either way, whichever one I'm working in, both will get the update. And if I did a new slug, if I change the author, and you can see where people are working in your studio. So if you had team members, then you'd see this wouldn't be 0. It would have like all their avatars up here showing, and you can find where they're working. That is the Presence API. But that is showing the real time between the deployed and the local version, which I think is really awesome. And that is our Sanity Studio up and running, now deployed, and you can share it and you can do all the customization that you'd like. Okay, so to show it in a front end situation, I'm going to actually use one of Sanity's templates, and we're going to use the Build with Next.js blog. So I'm going to click into that. And this is a whole blog template that was made by the Sanity team, so you can deploy with Vercel. I've already done all of that. So I'm going to go straight to the project. And here I have the project up and running, and I have the studio up and running. So if I make an edit here, I want to show you what it looks like. And it's being sent to the content lake and then sent to the front end. So we're going to make the edit in the studio. We'll change this to Kapehe's blog. And we'll hit publish. Now we're going to come over here and hit refresh. And we have, not fitting very well, but Kapehe's blog. And so that's how it's done. So we have the title over here. We put in the content. We edited it. We could have done some more customization and gone into the code. So all the info is right here. But we could have gone into the code and added another field like a subtitle or an image. We already have an image, but just in case we wanted to add anything else. And as we make edits here, it shows up on our front end. So that is how we get our Sanity project up and running. And connecting it to a front end, there are awesome resources, but you can also just start with a template. And the Sanity team has worked on this, and it's really awesome. You can see how everything's connected and how the project ID is being used. But definitely take the Sanity Studio that we made throughout this video and make it yours and do whatever you need to. And that is getting your Sanity project up and running. So thank you so much for watching. This is just a foundation for your content backend. Take this, customize it, make it yours, add your content query using GROQ or GraphQL. There are many resources that are there to help you along the way. A few I want to point out are the Sanity docs, where you'll find more info on GROQ, the studio, the content lake, and more. We do have an awesome Sanity community where you can find us at slack.sanity.io. Come ask questions, help answer questions, share your awesome Sanity projects. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.